My family mocked me for being adopted, so I found my birth parents, built a new life, and never returned a single call or text. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I grew up knowing I was adopted, but what hurt wasn't being adopted. It was how my family never let me forget that I didn't truly belong. My parents loved to remind me how lucky I was to have them, like I owed them my entire existence. Every dinner conversation seemed to circle back to how they had saved me. My mom would say, half smiling, "You'd probably still be in some foster home if it weren't for us," as if I was supposed to thank her right there between bites of mashed potatoes. My older brother, Ethan, was the golden one. Straight A's, charming, athletic, everything I apparently wasn't. He'd smirk and say things like, "Don't take it personally, man. You just don't have the family genes." My younger sister, Lily, copied him. Kids learn cruelty fast when they see it rewarded. Even family friends joined in, calling me their miracle project, like I was a pet they'd rescued. I laughed along at first, but inside, something twisted tighter every time. I tried so hard to fit in. I volunteered for every chore, stayed, up studying to get perfect grades, and always said thank you like a mantra. But no matter what I did, the message was the same. You're not really one of us. I remember once bringing home a certificate for academic excellence. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. He just said, "That's what we expect. It's the least you can do after all we've given you." At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering who my real parents were. People who didn't make love feel like a transaction. I told myself it didn't matter, that family was more than blood. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, blood was the one thing I'd been missing all along, and that realization was the beginning of everything that came after. On the outside, my family looked flawless. My parents were the kind of people who lived for appearances, matching holiday sweaters, polished smiles at church, and a spotless house that felt more like a showroom than a home. To everyone else, they were the perfect couple who opened their hearts to adopt a child out of pure kindness. People praised them constantly. "You two are such saints," they'd say, and my mom would place her hand over her heart, pretending to blush. Behind closed doors, that perfection cracked. The same woman who smiled sweetly at church would look at me and sigh, "Don't slouch. People will think we didn't raise you right." My father rarely spoke to me unless it was to criticize. How I ate, how I dressed, how I breathed too loudly during meals. Their love came with conditions: behave, achieve, conform. And if I dared to be anything else, their disappointment filled the room like smoke. I remember one Christmas vividly. I was 14. We had guests over, and my mom made a toast about the joy of family. She glanced at me mid-sentence and said with a laugh, "We always joke that we got a buy one get one free deal when we adopted him." Everyone chuckled, including my siblings. I smiled, too, because what else was I supposed to do? But something broke that night. It wasn't the joke itself. It was how natural it sounded, how easily my humiliation became entertainment. After the guests left, I tried to ask her why she said that. She waved me off. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. You should be proud of your story." Proud. That word echoed for years. Proud of what? Being their charity project? Their prop? That was the first time I realized my family didn't love me. They performed love for everyone else, and I was just another part of the show. If my parents built the illusion of a perfect family, my siblings were the ones who made sure I never forgot where I stood in it. Ethan, my older brother, was everything they admired. Handsome, confident, the kind of person who could do no wrong, and he knew it. He used that power like a weapon. "You're only here because Mom felt bad for you," he'd whisper when no one else was around. "You're like the family's charity project." Lily would giggle beside him, echoing, "Yeah, you're our bonus brother." At first, I tried to laugh it off. Kids tease each other, right? But their cruelty didn't fade with age. It sharpened. On my 15th birthday, Ethan wrapped a gift for me. I tore off the paper to find an empty photo frame. When I looked at him, confused, he smirked. For when you finally find a real family photo. My parents didn't say a word. My mom just muttered, "Don't start drama, it's a joke." After that, I stopped trying to join in. I spent dinners in silence, meals that felt more like social performances than family time. I ate quickly, cleared my plate, and disappeared into my room. The only place I felt safe was the small library near our house. It smelled of dust and old paper, comforting in a way my own home never was. I'd sit there for hours, buried in books about psychology, genetics, identity. I told myself it was curiosity, but I think I was searching for proof, something to explain why I never fit the mold. One day, in high school, a teacher asked us to create a family heritage tree. The project made the class excited. Everyone shared stories about grandparents and traditions. When it was my turn, I froze. I didn't even know where I was born. My parents had never told me. That night, I stared at that blank paper, realizing something terrifying. I wasn't just different, I was invisible. By the time I turned 18, the silence had turned into something heavier, like a weight pressing down on my chest every day I stayed in that house. I'd gotten into a decent college a few hours away, and the thought of leaving was the only thing keeping me sane. But before I left, there was one thing I couldn't ignore anymore: the gnawing need to know where I came from. Late one night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at the family computer and searched for how to find your birth parents. My hands trembled as I filled out a request through the state's adoption registry. It felt wrong, like I was betraying the people who raised me. But another part of me whispered that they'd never really been my family anyway. 2 weeks later, an envelope from the agency arrived. I hadn't even opened it when my mom walked in and saw it on my desk. "What's this?" she asked, her voice tightening. I tried to explain, but she snatched it from my hand before I could speak. "How dare you?" she hissed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." My dad came in moments later, demanding to know what was happening. When she told him, his face turned red. "You should have been grateful you were even taken in," he said. "Maybe we should have left you where you came from." Those words hit harder than any slap could have. That night I packed a small bag and left. I crashed on my friend Marcus's couch for a few days. He didn't ask questions, just let me sleep, eat, and exist. It was the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. As I stared at the ceiling in his tiny apartment, one thought repeated, in my mind like a heartbeat. If they didn't want me to find the truth, what were they hiding? Months passed after I left home, and I tried to focus on surviving college, juggling classes, part-time jobs, and the lingering ache of everything I'd left behind. I'd almost stopped thinking about that unopened envelope when one day, a letter from the adoption agency arrived at my dorm. My stomach tightened as I stared at the seal. I could have ignored it again, but something in me needed to know. The letter began plainly, almost coldly. "This document contains non-identifying information regarding your biological family." I skimmed, expecting a few dull lines about confidential records. But then a sentence stopped me cold. "Your birth parents did not voluntarily surrender you. Records indicate a clerical error led to a false report of neonatal death." I read it again and again, unable to breathe. My biological parents hadn't abandoned me. They were told I was dead. The paper trembled in my hands as my mind tried to connect the impossible dots. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts raced back to all the times my adoptive parents had avoided questions about my origins, the sudden hush whenever adoption came up. I remembered overhearing my mother once say to a family friend, "We don't talk about how it happened. It was meant to be." At the time, I thought she was being sentimental. Now, it sounded like guilt. Driven by something close to panic, I went home that weekend when I knew my parents would be out. I dug through the locked cabinet in my father's office, a place I'd been forbidden to touch my entire life. Inside were files, letters, and hospital documents. My hands froze when I saw my biological mother's name, Laura, and right beneath it, correspondence from the adoption agency. One of the letters was dated years after my adoption. It said, "The biological mother has attempted to reach the adoptive family regarding contact." Scrawled in my mother's handwriting at the bottom were 3 words, "Request denied. Permanently." I just sat there, the room spinning, as everything I believed about my childhood shattered in silence. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my old room, surrounded by evidence that my entire life had been built on a lie. By morning, I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. My parents had stolen not just my truth, but someone else's right to know their own child was alive. I waited for them to come home, heart pounding, the letter still clutched in my hand like a weapon. When they walked through the door, my mom's smile faltered immediately. "What are you doing here?" she asked. My voice shook, but I didn't care. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you tell my birth parents I was dead?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then my dad sighed, as if I was the one causing trouble. "Because you're ours. We didn't want to confuse you with those people." His tone was calm, almost rehearsed. My mom's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't from guilt. "We just wanted to protect you," she said, stepping closer. "You wouldn't understand how complicated it was." "Complicated?" I snapped. "You let a woman think her baby died." I threw the letter down on the table. "She looked for me. For years. And you stopped her." Ethan walked in halfway through the shouting. He glanced at the papers, smirked, and said, "Wow, guess you finally found your real family, huh?" That was it. The last thread snapped. "You know what?" I said, shaking. "You don't have to worry about me being confused anymore. You're right, I'm not one of you, and I never want to be." My dad's face hardened. "If you walk out that door, don't come back." I looked at him, really looked at him for the last time. "Good," I said quietly. Then I grabbed my bag and left, the sound of my mother's sobs echoing behind me. For the first time in my life, the air outside felt real. Cold, sharp, and honest. Leaving home felt like ripping off my own skin. I had no savings, no safety net, and no one waiting for me. But somehow, even with all that uncertainty, I felt lighter than I ever had before. I rented a small, beat-up room above a mechanic shop near campus, the kind of place where the walls shook when trucks passed and the radiator clanked like it was haunted. Still, it was mine. No more tiptoeing. No more pretending. I worked 2 jobs, waiting tables during the day and stocking shelves at night. I studied in between shifts, running on caffeine and spite. The exhaustion was brutal, but it gave me purpose. Every paycheck, every small success, felt like proof that I wasn't the helpless charity case they'd made me out to be. Sometimes, I caught myself reaching for my phone, instinctively wanting to tell my parents I'd passed an exam or gotten promoted. Then I'd stop, remembering the look on my father's face when he said, "Don't come back." That memory always sobered me, but college gave me something my family never did. People who saw me. Marcus, the same friend who took me in, became like a brother. He'd joke, "You've got this underdog movie energy. Man." I didn't know how to take compliments back then, but those words stuck. On quiet nights, I'd sit by the window, city lights reflecting off the glass, and think about Laura, my real mother. Somewhere out there, she existed. Maybe she still thought I was gone. Maybe she'd stopped looking. But a part of me knew. If she had searched once, she could be found again. That thought became my fuel. I promised myself I'd find her, not just to fill in the blanks, but to reclaim the story my adoptive family tried to erase. And once I did, I'd never let anyone rewrite it again. It took me years to gather the courage and the money to start looking for her. Life was stable by then. I had graduated, landed an entry-level job at a tech firm, and even managed to rent a better apartment. But every time I saw a mother and son laughing together on the street, something inside me twisted. I couldn't move on until I found her, so I contacted a private investigator who specialized in closed adoptions. His name was Daniel. A calm, methodical man who spoke like he'd seen every kind of heartbreak. It might take months, he warned. Sometimes years. I nodded. I was ready for that. I'd already waited 28. Weeks turned into months. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt. Then, one afternoon, while I was working late, Daniel called. His tone was different, soft, almost reverent. "I think I found her," he said. "Her name's Laura Hayes. She runs a small bookstore in Ashford, about 3 hours from you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My hands trembled so hard I had to sit down. He sent me a photo. It was a middle-aged woman standing outside a little shop called Second Chapter Books, sunlight spilling across her face. And even through the pixels I could see it. My eyes, her smile, that same stubborn chin I'd hated in the mirror for years. I printed the picture and carried it in my wallet for a week before I did anything. Every night I'd take it out and whisper, "That's her." I didn't know what I'd say when I saw her. What if she didn't want to meet me? What if she'd built a new life? One without the ghost of a son she thought she lost. But fear or not, I knew what I had to do. I booked a bus ticket for Friday morning, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward it. The bus ride to Ashford felt endless. My heart pounded the whole way, like it was counting down to something sacred and terrifying. When I finally stepped off, the autumn air hit me, crisp, sharp, alive. I followed the address Daniel had given me until I saw the sign, Second Chapter Books. The name felt poetic, almost deliberate, like fate had a sense of humor. Through the window, I saw her, Laura. She was stacking books, humming softly to herself. My throat tightened as I stood there, frozen, watching the woman who'd unknowingly haunted my entire life. It took everything in me to push the door open. The little bell above it chimed. She looked up. For a second, she just stared, like her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. Then the book slipped from her hands. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth. You look just like him." Her knees gave out and I caught her before she fell. I didn't even realize I was crying until she said my name, my birth name. "Michael." We sat there for hours, surrounded by shelves and silence and tears. She told me everything. How she was 20 when she gave birth to me. How the hospital told her I hadn't survived. How she'd begged for proof but was handed only a death certificate and condolences. She said she wrote letters every year. Birthday letters. To a child she thought she'd never see again. She brought out a small wooden box and handed it to me. Inside were baby clothes, old photos, and dozens of sealed envelopes addressed to Michael Hayes. My hands shook as I opened one. It said, "If you're out there somewhere, I hope you know I never stopped loving you." I broke down. All the anger, all the confusion, it just poured out. For the first time, someone held me and didn't expect me to say thank you for it. But even in that moment of peace, a shadow lingered. Because I knew, once my adoptive family found out, they wouldn't let this reunion go unpunished. For a few blissful weeks, I stayed in Ashford. Laura insisted I take the spare room above the bookstore. Every morning, she'd make coffee and we'd sit by the front window talking about everything. Books, life, the years we'd lost. It felt unreal, like I'd stepped into the life I was always meant to have. But peace never lasts long when your past still knows your number. One evening, while I was helping her close up shop, my phone lit up with dozens of missed calls. My adoptive mother. My father. Even Ethan. My chest tightened. I hadn't heard from them in years. I almost ignored it, but curiosity, habit, made me listen to one voicemail. "After everything we did for you," my mother's voice cracked, "you repay us by running to her? You're destroying this family, do you understand that?" Another message followed, my father this time, cold and clipped. "You're making a mistake. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. You're still our son. Don't forget who raised you." Then Ethan's came, mocking as ever. "Guess you finally found Mommy. Hope she likes damaged goods." Their words hit me like a tidal wave. For the first time in years, the guilt clawed its way back. I sat on the floor of the bookstore that night, phone in my hand, heart pounding. Laura found me there, shaking. "They found out," I whispered. "They're saying I betrayed them. She knelt beside me, her voice trembling but firm. Michael, love built on control isn't love. It's ownership. But their voices echoed louder than hers for days after. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The part of me that had been raised to obey, to earn approval, kept whispering that I'd gone too far. I even packed my bag one morning, ready to drive back, to apologize, to fix something that was never mine to fix. But when I reached the car, I saw the reflection of Laura's bookstore behind me, her, standing in the window, scared I might disappear again. And in that reflection, I saw the truth. If I went back, I'd lose myself forever. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the smell of coffee drifting upstairs. Laura was downstairs, humming softly, setting out 2 mugs. It felt peaceful, ordinary. But inside, I was making a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going back. I wasn't answering their calls, their emails, or their guilt trips. Silence would be my revenge. I bought a new phone, a new number, and deleted every message before I could listen to it again. My adoptive family's voices disappeared into static. I changed my address, cut off every mutual contact, and quietly disappeared from their world, just like they had made me disappear from mine years ago. The first few weeks were hard. I'd wake up with phantom thoughts, instincts telling me to check in, to make sure no one was angry with me. That's what emotional conditioning does. It makes you think peace is dangerous. But every day I stayed silent, I felt a little stronger. With Laura's help, I started rebuilding. She taught me to slow down, to exist without waiting for permission. Together, we turned the bookstore's dusty attic into an office space. I learned bookkeeping, marketing, and by the end of the year, we'd doubled her sales. It wasn't about money. It was about finally building something instead of begging for scraps. Sometimes, customers would comment, "You two look so alike. You must be related." Laura would smile and say, "That's my son." And for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch when someone called me that. I never posted about my new life, never shared updates. Every achievement, every success was a quiet victory they'd never see. Silence became my freedom, my armor, and the longer it lasted, the more I realized sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting your truth. It's living it so loudly that the people who broke you never get to hear it. 5 years passed before I heard from them again. I was closing the shop one evening when Laura handed me an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single letter. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakable. It was my adoptive mother's. She wrote that my father had died suddenly and that the family wanted me to come to the funeral. "You were his son," it said, "no matter what happened." She ended with, "Please, Michael, come home." For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the words. Home. That word didn't mean what it used to. It didn't mean walls filled with silence and conditional love. It didn't mean pretending to be grateful for cruelty. It didn't mean them. That night, I sat by the fireplace in the back of the bookstore, the one Laura always lit in the winter. The flames danced quietly as I read the letter one last time. Then, without a word, I folded it carefully, set it on the edge of the fire, and watched it curl into ash. The paper blackened, the ink bled, and all those years of control and pain burned away with it. Laura came in and didn't say anything. She just placed her hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I actually am." The next morning, I visited a small cemetery on the edge of town. Not the one where my adoptive father was buried, the one where my real father rested. I placed a single white lily on his grave and whispered, "I found her." And she found me. We're okay now. As I stood there, wind brushing through the trees, I realized something I never had before. Closure doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from choosing peace over pain, silence over chaos, and finally, truth over fear. And that's when I knew I didn't need to go home. I already was.